All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Emotional Damage.
Yeah,
episode 8.
For real.
Season 3.
What is even happening? Like, I feel like Michael from that scene in The Office of the. I would like to report a hate crime.
Michael, that's not what a hate crime is.
Well, I hated it. Like, I have thought myself to be a connoisseur of emotional damage, in storytelling, an emotional masochist.
Emotional, journeys.
But I really wish I had a safe word right now, because I would have said it a long time ago. I would have been like, no, stop, pineapple, avocado, red light.
It's so true.
No,
It's so true.
Stop, please, you're too far.
Back in season 1.
Too much too soon, too much ever,
Right. The great thing about Fruits Basket is that it gives us so many wonderfully wholesome moments filled with levity and charm and just peace.
To give us hope so that way it hurts more when it stabs it in the back.
Because, goddammit, this show will have the best freaking positive everyone lived happily ever after ending.
I straight up...
Except Corinna.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a part of me that straight up is like, I might need some therapy when this show's done. This show has done a number of
therapy.
I need
therapy.
it now. Yeah. This is why
I've booked that therapist. I'm sorry, they're mine for the next month or so.
This is why, Tohru, you can't get too close to people's problems without taking care of yourself, because just us witnessing this fictional story is too much sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're actually in the story and in it, and it's a person in this fictional world, so... Yeah.
Nice. So y'all, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion. Well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
That was a
it was a conversation.
Beautiful episode.
One person speaking.
Yep.
The majority of it.
And the thing is, if I ignore the fact that Akito just got up there with a knife after the other two left, this was a incredibly wonderfully hopeful episode in my mind.
Right.
Here's why.
Kyo. It was just Kyo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, Kyo, he ran away. You disappoint me. He said all of these things. Now, the reason why I still see that as being something that gives me hope is because he's actually speaking.
Yes.
He's
told her everything.
Right, exactly.
He's bared his heart to her.
This conflict that he has been propagated by the fact that he wouldn't talk about it, and as such, there wasn't really any way for him to be properly equipped to deal with it, because then he's just trapped in his own head with his darkest thoughts. That's not going to go well.
No.
He communicated it in a very painful way, both for himself and for Tohru. And he intentionally did it that way.
And I believe he believes everything that he's saying. I believe he believes he's being entirely honest.
Oh, I'm sure that. Well, the thing is, even with him saying "you disappoint me" or "I'm disappointed in you," I do think he genuinely means that.
I think he genuinely means that too. Yeah,
and not just as he thinks he means that or whatever, but it seems to me that Kyo, because of the immense amount of guilt that he carries, both from himself and put upon him from others, and shame and things, he wants to be punished. Why would he agree to that, bet with Akito, right? Yes, he wants to have his hatred he wanted to have his hatred for Yuki fueled, of course, right? Yeah.
But he doesn't believe he can win.
Right.
So
when people tell him otherwise, that hurts him, because they're basically saying, keep hoping.
Yeah, don't give me hope. It's literally that meme, yeah.
And so, of course he would say, I'm disappointed in you. Because he was so sure that for someone like Tohru...
If he gave her every single reason...
She would not actually be able to love him the way that she does.
Yeah, don't you love your mom more than anything else in the world?
Right. It's the I am not deserving of love, so I won't accept the love that comes from other people. Especially yours.
Yeah.
Because
God, this is a classic storytelling thing to have the guy who is so riddled with his own darkness that he does not believe he is deserving of love, and thus he is incapable of seeing, in a lot of ways, any of the, well, potential, like, ways in which he's actually kind of similar to Tohru. The
Sure.
ways in which they could actually bond over this pain.
And
builds barriers intentionally
Yep.
to keep that from giving him any hope so that he will then have a higher level of pain.
Right.
Because for when you're dealing with this level of trauma and abuse and all this kind of stuff here, your threshold for what you accept just stretches.
Yep.
And that's scary. It's also incredibly sad to look at from the outside because you see it happening.
Right. And just in case, I want to make this clear. Just in case, I don't think there would be many, but just in case there are,
Okay.
some people that would have gotten this far into Fruits Basket and would think that maybe this is something that is overly dramatized, but in the end unrealistic because people don't actually respond to those kinds of feelings that way.
I see.
It is absolutely a real thing that if someone doesn't believe they're worthy of love, they will do all kinds of things to sabotage it.
Yep.
because even if it's a bit of a darker world that they live in with that perspective,
Yep.
it's something that they know, and the devil you know versus the devil you don't, right? Because what's worse, to be cold or to, be brought to a place where it's warm and then be kicked out into the cold again, right? No contest.
It's the transition of the temperature change that breaks
Yeah.
you, not the actual temperature itself. Now,
Right.
that does break you over a period of time,
But it's
but over the course of
if you
2 seconds, you
right.
know.
If you've gotten to the point where you can
Adjust.
where you have built up your defenses to be able to survive
Creating
in
a
this
bad
harsh
guy, for
environment,
instance.
creating a bad guy, for instance, right? I love that Kyo was able to admit that, and I love that it was something where he was able to verbalize his own disappointment in himself for doing so.
Right.
When, dude, with the shit that you've been needing to deal with, yeah, if that's what helps you keep living,
Yeah.
you do what you gotta
do what you gotta do, yeah.
right?
There's so much in which people will then begin grading their life because they're in a low place and think then that they have to handle it all perfectly.
Right.
And that's just such a fucked up, toxic way of thinking.
And also, it on top of that, let's say you deal with something in a particular way and
Sure.
it's fine for you back then.
Yeah.
But then as you grow as a person, you realize, I would not be okay with doing that right now.
That's
I do not
okay.
need to do that right now.
Yeah, that's
fine. That's
also
great.
okay.
That's great.
Don't
so you can
judge
do things
your
differently.
past self.
Right, but saying that back then, I was a terrible person for doing that back then because I wouldn't do that now. That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. You were a different person then too.
You don't judge yourself when you're a 3-year-old with the same metrics that you do when you're 30.
Yeah.
That's kind
Idiocy.
of that's idiocy. It's folly. It's silly. If and the thing is that you can do that without realizing it because it's all inside your head, right? And then once you actually start to talk about it, then you have the opportunity to realize, oh, shit.
Yeah. This
Right?
is why people will tell you, like plenty of times, it's very good to talk about your issues with somebody you trust.
Yes.
Now, obviously,
that's an important part of it, the with you trust.
obviously, we're
that you
not
trust.
talking about the potential ways in which the person themselves needs to be ready to be there and receive and not hurt you in that moment of tender vulnerability.
Right.
But the act itself of taking things, verbalizing them, requires a lot of things. You have to think about it. You have to choose your words. There's an element of translating emotional, I don't know, just stuff to logical, structured process so that they're actual words that someone outside of you can understand. That process requires an element of I don't know. It requires a process, basically, that allows you to better understand yourself because you are hearing the things that you are saying.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
feel like it's
powerful how therapists will get into basically the idea that people will help themselves a lot by just having someone to talk to about their stuff.
Well, and that's how you know you're with a good therapist. Is not one that'll like give you answers to things.
True.
But they'll know how to guide you in your conversation with yourself.
Right.
So that way you can actually
help yourself
and make progress and come to those sorts of realizations.
And it empowers you when you're not with the therapist to be able to
do
help
that on your
yourself
own.
when you are in that similar place.
Now,
so,
in this situation,
all really good stuff.
In this situation,
yeah,
is the way that Kyo did this the best way? Hell no. Is he probably shaming himself and feeling guilty even more for the fact that he's talked about it in this way?
Yeah.
Yes.
Probably.
Is that something that contributes to the downward spiral that he's been on that Tohru has given him a break from? Yes. Mm-hmm. Does that mean that he shouldn't have talked about it at all?
No.
I would say no.
No.
There is the possibility that Tohru wouldn't be able to handle something like this happening. If that were the case, he would not fault her in any way. And in fact, I would say the standing up for herself in that regard is the big character struggle that she's been on, right? But, Kyo, if you think for a second that Tohru would
abandon you.
Would abandon you.
She chased after you when you were in your cat form. This is a direct callback to that bit there.
And the thing is, good job. It worked. She's not chasing after you.
Yeah, because in some ways, this is her character development.
Well,
she's realized that he's basically given the wall of, I'm disappointed in you. She needs to process how she feels about that, because she did not like that.
Well, and
that hurt her.
You know her better now, and you're closer to her now, so you knew exactly what you needed to do to hurt her enough to make her not come after you.
Yeah.
Before, he didn't think that Tohru was legitimate. He thought it was kind of fake, right?
Or let's not make that judgment.
Okay.
I get what you're getting at,
but that the way in which she treated other people would not continue once she saw him in his cat form.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is the next cat form.
Exactly.
My true self, who I am from the past.
Yeah, not just I'm ugly and hideous and scary, but as a result of my own selfishness, your mom is dead. Right? And
yeah, and this is why this show is so brilliant. We have now set up a scenario by which we can have Tohru and fucking Akito, the character that needs the most, in some ways, forgiveness, if you will, probably deserves it very little compared to... There are other characters that...
Akito just murdered somebody.
Yeah. There are characters that deserve it debatably less.
Yeah,
but there are probably two or three
exactly,
of them.
And we can name them, of like, okay, we'd have to get into like details, to try and measure that.
Akito needs to do essentially what Kyo just did as well.
Right,
needs to verbalize and process a lot of this out. But Tohru is not necessarily strong enough for Akito. And another thing, she does not love Akito.
And on top of that, Akito has the ultimate, oh, you beat me in a conversation? Well, doesn't matter. I have a knife, right?
And I don't think Tohru would defend herself. I think Tohru has a possibility of ending up succumbing, theoretically, to some elements of Akito's barbs.
Or
Akito has
Kyo's barbs, and then Akito's knife is the finisher.
In some ways, yes, but in other ways, no. I actually feel like on some level, this is where the true contest of this whole show's philosophical, emotional kind of point and story to it will be handled within the next episode. Because they might go and shift focus to other characters, but I highly doubt it, because these are in some ways the two opposite halves of this conflict here.
That too, but also something like, say, Tohru and Kyo talking, that's a lot easier to put on hold. Akito coming after Tohru with a knife, that's That's a bit more difficult.
It's a bit more difficult,
Like,
yeah. And I don't believe there's going to be a fight. I don't believe there's even going to be much, if anything, of the knife being used beyond maybe she kidnaps Tohru and then basically ends up having this mental breakdown. Full on admits to killing Kureno, does a whole litany of things, slings a lot of it Tohru. Tohru's just sitting there just like, I can't believe what's happening, you know, in a lot of shock, I would assume. But then starts asking questions. And then Akito starts to spiral, and I think yes, it could get violent. I think there's I have a fierce belief though that because of the way they set up Kyo promising to be the protector here, which is a very iconic kind of male archetype role or what have you, to defend those that do not have the strength to defend themselves.
Well, and also it's the perfect example of Kyo having hope, because Kyo had been, and afterwards he continued to be so focused on himself and his own problems for good reason,
right?
But not believing that he could overcome them. That why would he think about anyone else? Why would he? Like it's right. He can't afford to.
I wouldn't blame him ever.
And that's understandable to be in that situation. And this is why I think it hurt him so much when Yuki ended up saving Tohru instead. Is that he's like, I am as a child that has gone through all of this shit.
Yeah.
I am in a good enough place now where I can actually take my mind off of myself because I'm doing well enough that I think I have the arrogance to think I might actually be able to help someone else. Someone like me who has had this shitty life and has been told it would be better if I was dead. I killed my mother, all of these things. Maybe I can help out. And the thing is, I get the feeling that this is going to end up with Tohru in the hospital.
Getting stabbed?
I think she's going to get stabbed.
Yeah, she's not going to die, but...
Kyo will not actually be there.
No.
And I think this is an important distinction. Traditionally, especially with the idea of like romance and things like that, right? You have the person come in and save the other, right? Sure. Whichever gender role you're talking about, and whether it's a literal physical saving or like an emotional saving or whatever. Yeah. But the situation right here, the true conflict is not about whether or not they love each other and whether or not that's able to be communicated, but whether Kyo is able to accept the fact that Tohru loves him and that he is an imperfect person that can fail.
And in some ways that Tohru can be also, in this case, the perfect person for you. Not because she's perfect or because she's going to save you or what have you, but just because over the course of all this time you spent together, she got to know you. She likes you. She fell in love with you. And she didn't have some wrong interpretation.
Nope.
You were kind of an asshole. You were kind of a prick. There's a lot of things about you that she looked past because she saw something else there.
Right.
And fell in love with you. And you've changed. So, this is so good. This is going to be so powerful.
The very thing that Tohru is capable of doing with others but not capable of doing herself, I feel like is fairly similar to Kyo's situation. Even though it's something, Kyo's situation is a bit more under the surface and not as obvious.
Yes.
Because Kyo has been beating himself up because he wasn't a hero. He did not save the person who was in danger.
Sure.
And done something that would have come at a cost to himself. Not even just the usual, like, a car's going to hit somebody and you pull them out of the way, right? Which, in and of itself, you don't have to be expected to do because that's a situation where you could be panicking, all sorts of stuff. You don't know what your mind's going to be doing in that situation, etc. But, also, this is something that would come at a great cost to myself and is the literally most traumatizing, like, instigating factor for my whole life. My mom killed herself because of this form that I have.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, if I just let everyone see that and also let the one person who ever, like, because they didn't know that I had that form, or maybe because they wouldn't have cared, saw me for who I was and accepted me, that ended up helping me actually put myself back together as a person.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to give all of that up. And it's not even that he chooses against it. He hesitates. He worries. He's not sure.
Doubts,
and then he doubts. And then all of a sudden, oh, it's too late. Right?
You know what's so beautiful about this? My mind is racing with so much imagery that this story has communicated to us via not just Kyo, but a lot of different things in this story. But the ways in which Kyo's... I love characters that do this because it makes analyzing their stories, I would say, very engaging, is that they have generally at least two layers to them that are hidden underneath the surface. And both usually are characterized by one or more very strong emotions. And Kyo's right now is an element of both guilt and hatred.
Sure.
There is internalized self-hatred,
Sure.
propagated by the guilt and all that. But there's also an externalized form of hatred in the villain that he's created in Yuki. The other aspect of it is the fact that he feels immense shame and guilt over the things that have happened to him and the things that he's done.
Right.
Now, because of this, a lot of the things that he does in the earlier parts of the show have extra meaning now as we get to understand the layers.
Right.
But one of the most powerful moments for Kyo from season 1 was him slapping Tohru away in his cat form.
Right.
When he did that, I think in some ways he intentionally was like, no, I killed her. In that moment, I basically pushed her into the street. I slapped her away.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
When he did that with Tohru, it was a don't come near me. I'm horrible, but also a maybe, because he said he repressed the memory. It could have been just a reflex at that point.
Right.
I feel the poignant poetry of him slapping the visage of Kyoko away in that moment.
Right. Whether it's a literal subconscious like connection, or whether it's a
it's just an artist's
thematic manifestation of his internal state that we are now seeing to have a lot more depth and complexity than we were privy to back when it happened.
Right.
Either way, I think it definitely works. And that's why I think it's going to be important for Kyo not to come back, for Akito to stab Tohru. Not that that has to happen. If it goes some other way, great. I don't
Suddenly
actually want
wild
Tohru to get
appears.
stabbed. Right, exactly.
But what a surprise. This is exactly what I thought would happen. You know?
Right. But Kyo's real conflict is not about being better and managing to do the thing that he should do.
Say it.
It's about him learning to accept and forgive himself when he doesn't do the perfect thing. Right?
Yeah.
That's the real conflict. And I can just see a point when he is at her hospital bed and tearing himself apart because he's like, oh my God,
I did this.
It's happened again.
Yeah.
Right? I did this. And then he has to wrestle with that and grapple with that while he doesn't know if she'll live or not. Right?
Yeah. That's gonna be brutal.
Yeah.
I think in some ways though, obviously this is an adaptation, but the fact that this is episode 8, I have zero worry about Toru's life. Even though I'm pretty sure she's going to bleed sometime from a knife, from Akito.
4 episodes means we're probably not going to be getting 4 episodes of like grieving and, putting pieces back together after Toru's funeral or something.
3-episode arc in, like in conversation or what
exactly.
have you,
But that does seem like the perfect amount of time to have her lingering dangerously in the hospital.
It would be a way to reduce the cast of characters a little bit.
It could also so they've been having people break the curse. Their bond with Akito, right? one by one. And the thing is that most of the time it's actually been from things kind of unrelated, right? It's like we'll see times when it frays or whatever, but like it'll be characters that aren't actually getting the majority of the major focus at that point, right? You know, not like the conflict focus.
Yeah, in some ways it feels like they're the characters that are becoming a bit more whole in their relationships with people in general. And
right.
then they start to see the curse breaking there, yeah.
And one of the things that I've been thinking is if you were to have a climactic final moment where the curse gets broken on like a bunch of people, right? Because, you know, at the rate we've been going, not all of the curses, if that were to continue, not all of the curses will break by the end of the show. So you're probably going to have some moment where like a bunch of them are broken.
All at once, yeah. It would start with Akito.
Sure. Tohru being in the hospital sounds like it could be a pretty catalyzing event for a lot of people. But
for a lot of people, yeah.
We had a play episode. And what did they do? They were doing a rendition of Snow White. What happens with Snow White?
No, it was Cinderella.
Oh no, it was Cinderella. Okay, never mind. Never mind. Okay, I was gonna say.
I'm like, no.
Snow White ends up getting taken advantage of by the lady, and then she's asleep, and true love's kiss bring her back. You know, like. Okay, all right, Cinderella.
I swear to God,
no, it's not actually. It wouldn't actually.
I will
be
also
that,
bet money that I don't think Tohru is going to be awakened, you know, in the hospital bed by true love's kiss.
No, definitely. But the idea of there being a point where then the princess is in a like she's dead state, that's where I was kind of thinking it would go. But that's right. It was Cinderella. It was a sort of Cinderella.
Yeah.
Play. Okay.
Yeah. Pseudo. Cinderella.
All right. I'm gonna put a pin in that and take it back to the drawing board. See if I can, because I feel like there's a connection there.
Yeah. I feel like right now we're in the everyone is resolving their character arcs kind of section of a final season kind of thing. In some ways, that's the one part here where I feel like if anything, certain things are moving a bit too fast at times.
Sure.
And that's an element of where I'm like, this feels like maybe again a little bit of like an adaptation thing where things are getting focused on individually and then going, you're done. And then you're done, and then you're done. And then we're just kind of going around to a bunch of those things here. And this is like set up for the final stage of the development for Yuki, Tohru, Kyo, Akito.
Well, know. Because Akito going after Tohru with a knife is not Akito's big climax. And even if it was, Akito is not that important in the grand narrative of this story. So, yeah.
I get what you're saying in that regard, but Akito is also
he's the big antagonistic force.
Yeah, she's the absolutely like biggest aspect of the story's conflict, even more than Tohru in that regard, though.
Sure.
Yeah,
but it's not about you know beating the bad guys or whatever, right?
There are no good guys or bad guys here. The way in
it did feel kind of pointed that it was brought up, there
by Kyoko
after
fucking
Kureno,
Kyoko.
Not, of course, back then Kureno was murdered, but like in the story of what's happening now,
in the way this was delivered, to
us, the audience, Kureno just got murdered. Now maybe it'll be something where it's like, okay, he actually surved, you know?
No, but Akito will be saved,
right?
That whole thing there confirmed it. There are no good guys or bad guys. Shigure is going to be saved. Like Ren is going to be saved.
It's gonna be gonna be a doozy. It's gonna be a whole thing.
This is going to be a doozy. But not only that, Tohru is not going to be this like goddess being that provides unlimited forgiveness to everybody.
Right. Well, and I think
forgiveness has to come from within.
And
that's the part that I'm the most excited for here. Kyo has set himself up in a lot of ways to have his dark night of the soul with Yuki.
Yeah.
With fucking Yuki. Now, Yuki might not find him because, when Kyo wants to be alone, he's gonna fucking be alone.
Right.
He's used to that.
Maybe Yuki is just gonna come back and see Tohru lying bleeding on the ground and then call an ambulance or something.
Or maybe, Yuki's a genius here and is like, once he got down to the bottom of the stairs, he realizes, shit, there's no way I can actually find Kyo now. I've lost him. I'm going to get Kazuma. And we get fucking Kazuma into this shit.
That would be great. I would love that.
And then Kazuma can get on the phone and call people, and then it's just the everyone, I need all hands on deck. Avengers assemble. Get everybody out there. We're looking for Kyo.
Yeah. We're on a cat hunt.
And the thing is, that could start a domino effect of where then people go, okay, someone needs to go, check in on Tohru, and they're like, well, where's Tohru? Tohru's gone too. Wait, what the fuck? Tohru's gone too?
Okay.
And then
I'm
so excited.
So this is maybe me reaching a little bit.
Okay,
it totally could be. But I'm going to go back into the fairy tale type stuff for a bit. Because I believe that this absolutely will get a happy ending that is going to be absolutely wonderful.
Good man.
So, Kyo believes he's unworthy of love and all the stuff that we've talked about and things like that. It's very complicated, very messy, right? In this situation, he took a stab, if you will, at Tohru in the way that he knew would hurt her, right? And as a result of that, she didn't chase him, and now she's going to have to deal with Akito. However, as a result of him saying that, do you just not love your mother the most anymore? And all of that stuff? Tohru did actually have to think about that. It gave her pause a little bit, right?
She had plenty of time to while listening to Kyo. Yeah.
Indeed. And then she ended up saying something of, well, I guess I just need to go against my mother.
Yeah. And that was something she said with power and confidence and emotion.
Right. And what was the big instigating factor that caused Tohru to have this kind of toxic positivity, not caring about herself kind of thing? It was because she was worried about her mom. And because of the whole thing, of her dad and everything, and she's like, okay, so I'm going to be this perfect child, basically, right? I'm gonna do all these things
for her,
for
her sake, yeah.
Now that she is realizing that there is a possibility, even though she doesn't believe that her mom would say something like that, there is the possibility that her mom might have not necessarily been the kind of person that she thought she was.
Yeah.
And she is willing to distance herself from that, if indeed that was the case. That is potential progress that Tohru is making towards addressing herself and who she is going to choose to be. The big conflict that she's been dealing with.
Yes.
If that comes about as a result of Kyo's mistake, and when he was specifically trying to hurt Tohru, wouldn't that just be a perfect storybook ending?
Yes!
Should Kyo have necessarily said those things? No. But what if, as a wonderful little miracle, it actually ended up helping her in some way?
Oh, I think this whole thing is going to be helpful for both of them.
Yeah. So,
and that's where we get the magic of love and forgiveness and relationship and family. Well, found family, but family. It's we talked about this. We bared our souls.
Yeah.
I mean, Kyo literally bared everything to Tohru, short of saying "I love you."
Right. Yeah.
But no, we know Kyo. We know.
And I get the feeling the mangaka is saving that one for
very special.
Very
special, kind of almost shoujo-esque, moment where it's going to.
Because why can't we have both? Is this story at its core about the romance? No. But the romance certainly doesn't hurt.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
It's being handled really well. We have complicated, messy relationships in this story.
And also, I want to say, one of the things that bothers me so much when it happens in romance stories is when you have someone with like a knife or something that comes into play, and then it's like, then you have a villain, a bad guy, etc. Fill in the blank, where then the conflict starts not being about the characters, but actually about something else. We have that here, and it works beautifully. Like,
it's basically did you think this was not the final season? Like,
right.
We're ending shit
like
in 5 episodes.
We were kind of wondering why Akito hadn't done something like this until now, especially after we saw that whole bit with Rain at the balcony. So yeah, it's only natural that something like this would happen. And then you get
also now that she's dealing with all of them starting to have their tethers break off from her.
Yeah, and then you get the meta benefit of it being an additional crazy event to happen that will increase the conflict and the tension and everying, while at the same time it not being jarring, because for some reason in this, in some wholesome slice of life comedy, somebody suddenly, oh no, truck couldn't put you in a comatose state, right? It's like you don't have to worry about that shit. So, I love it.
I love that Yuki only stepped out after hearing that this was all going on, because obviously Kyo was speaking quite fervently outside of his
Indeed.
window there.
Yep.
That he only chased after Kyo once Kyo started to run away.
Yeah.
Or when Kyo said, I'm disappointed in you, and then started to turn. Basically, knowing that in that moment, Yuki was overcome with the need to, at the very least, protect Tohru a little bit, but he didn't go and be like, oh, I'm going to stand and shield her.
Yeah,
I'm
he
going to
ran after Kyo.
Run after Kyo, yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh,
And
I love that.
I just love that we're now at that point where both of our boys have gone through major character development. They're both completely different people.
Oh, yeah.
And thus, their vulnerability is something that is this beautiful catharsis for us, the viewer, because we're like, finally, yes, good. Is it emotional damage in every other sense of it? Yes.
Am I still a bit like, hold on, show, why are you having this triumphant music when
the music!
When Akito's coming up with a knife after Tohru.
I think that's it. In some ways, the demon of this story, the one that has the foundational aspects of the bondage that they all exist by being tethered to this family through the curse of the Zodiac. That being has essentially tipped its own hand.
Yep.
Now, there is some manipulation, there is some other kind of things going on here. Akito is actually still a human being.
And absolutely needs to be stopped.
She's
got a knife and she's already stabbed one person who's probably dead. So
right. And she wasn't here for Shigure. Like, no. She is here for Tohru.
But it is rather satisfying in a way that this is Akito showcasing, admitting to herself, basically, that
she's lost.
She's lost.
Yeah.
She cannot do the conversation manipulating thing. The only thing she has left is the direct power of, I can kill you.
You're the reason, Tohru, that all this has happened. And admitting, basically, at that point, that Tohru
none of it has anything to do with me.
Right. And, yeah, totally. There's so many things we could get into, I would say, about the emotional psychology of this story. But in some ways, I feel like our discussions, and this is a weird just tangent here, but I feel like our discussions aren't needed to remind y'all, the audience, of things you already know.
And also, we're not psychologists.
And also, we're not psychologists. So we are going to have our own limited understanding of
we can
things
offer fresh perspective, maybe, that might be like, oh, maybe there's something to that.
But
and at the same time, maybe they're mistaking Snow White for Cinderella, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Our subjective insights and what have you.
Yep.
So having then Akito admitting, essentially, that the powerful one in this dynamic is Tohru. Obviously, Tohru needs at least a little bit of time to have her moment to not necessarily monologue, but to have the sun shine a little bit.
Ooh, okay.
You know,
maybe this is going a bit far.
Okay.
Tohru took everything that Kyo said. She didn't really say much in response. Granted, he didn't give her much of a chance, right?
Yeah.
And she wouldn't be able to, of course, keep him from leaving. But do you think there's any possibility of connection of the idea that Tohru has been doing things that harm herself in some way, put a lot of pressure and burden on herself?
Okay.
And then, as a result of a conversation, a physical threat ends up approaching her that she doesn't necessarily have any way to deal with because she hasn't been standing up for herself. I feel like that's maybe a shaky like comparison.
I feel like
I wonder if there's
it's an unfinished thought.
Sure.
What's the follow up on that though?
Well, just the idea that it's potentially thematically poignant, not just from the standpoint of Kyo leaving and then so Akito shows up, right? But also potentially from Tohru's standpoint, in that she has her biggest problem has been doing things that don't allow her to take care of herself and put her in potential actual danger, whether you're talking physical, emotional, etc.
I see what you're saying. This is something where the threat is much simpler,
right?
And thus we will see where her her own dysfunction meets with
Exactly.
Akito's
With
aggression.
with that sort of like hard reality, rude awakening of like, that doesn't work here,
right.
Tohru.
Tohru,
Like, you're
do
in
you-
actual danger.
Would
What are you
Tohru
going to do?
theoretically have even the thought that she deserves what Akito is bringing to her? I think that will be where a lot of the conflict will
She
source
definitely, with what just happened, I would not be surprised if she wasn't in the greatest emotional place right now.
Right, but I think in some ways there's something of the idea that if you come at this from Akito's perspective, what Akito needs in the immediate sense is not someone saying put down the knife.
Uh-huh.
What it's someone that will do is basically admit to themselves that Akito is okay. There's an element of this that is like it's the element of basically saying Tohru doesn't need to correct Kyo in that he's doing this wrong.
Sure.
That's the exact opposite of what Kyo would need right
Right.
now. She sitting there and listening to him go through this was exactly what he needed. The fact that Tohru didn't interrupt him, the fact that Tohru let this whole thing go out. Now, Kyo wasn't accusing her of anything. A lot of it was pointed at herself. I mean, at himself. But if Akito comes into this situation and starts projecting and starts throwing a whole bunch of things that are directed at her, but well, I'm sorry, that are directed at I can't speak right here.
Right.
That are directed at Tohru
because they're both female. Yeah.
that are directed at Tohru, but are more revealing of Akito's internal state. Tohru shouldn't necessarily try to call out the projecting immediately, but actually accept and just be like, yes, that's okay.
The safest thing for Tohru is to not engage with Akito in any kind of verbal like sparring or whatever, because given that Akito is kind of given up on that, if Akito reverts to that, that's time that Akito is not stabbing Tohru.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
You're talking about this as a way to keep Akito from stabbing Tohru. I am not talking about that.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Tohru basically being like, I understand. From your perspective, yeah, stabbing me makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Killing me makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I wasn't...
letting basically agreeing with Akito at some ways brings up in some ways this almost like reverse thing where Akito then goes, no, you're supposed to make this easier for me and go like, no, fight back, resist, or what have you.
The thing I was trying to get at with that was not just that, it'll keep Tohru from being stabbed. Yeah, it'll placate Akito, but that the knife is Akito's last resort because she is not, in her mind, getting her needs met the way things are going. So she is doing something drastic as a result, as a way to try and change that.
She's not in a good place.
She's and she hasn't been in a good
I don't
place
think she's
in a
confident
very
either.
long time. So
She might just be holding onto the knife because it's that bit of guilt of, I did this, I can't let go of this and pretend like I didn't kill Kureno just now.
right,
Like,
so
like it might be coming to Tohru and being like, save me, please help me.
Yeah.
I
Who
just
knows?
killed Kureno.
right. It's a whole bag
bunch
of
of
cats.
it. Yeah.
Kind of for Akito right now
Yeah.
because it's a very very crazy situation. But time that Akito is not stabbing Tohru, yes, it's something where it's good because then Tohru isn't being stabbed.
Right.
But two, the reason that would be happening is because the needs that Akito hasn't been getting met, that is the reason why she's using the knife.
Okay.
That would mean that they're being addressed in some way, and that's why then Akito doesn't feel the need to use the knife. If that makes sense?
Kind of.
Like it's kind of like a weird reverse,
I kind of get
thing.
it. Yeah.
But yeah. But
all right.
oh boy.
Yeah. We got doozy after doozy. Fruits Basket, Season 3. Doesn't know when to let up right now.
No,
So
it doesn't.
Next
It
episode's
really
going to be
doesn't.
just as crazy. Probably in some ways way less scary though. Because
I think so too.
Because there's an element of where on a meta level I can't unthink of the idea that Tohru could be killed here. I
Right,
know
that's
she
just-
won't be.
That's
That's
not
just
going
not
to
possible.
happen.
That's
Yeah.
not what this story is going to do.
Right.
But the idea of Kyo and Tohru not ending up together is very much on the table.
Right.
That is very much possible.
Exactly. It's that weird thing in stories where it's like, the more drastic the consequences get, the
The
more
more certain you can be about certain things. Yeah.
right, the more that you can feel like, okay, I feel like it's not going to be that. But if you take down the drasticness of the consequences just a bit, then it's like, they could do that. They could do that, right? You know,
It's also the kind of thing of where I feel like with patterns within storytelling, especially for TV shows, and this is something that is very kind of fun once you start to like watch longer shows specifically. There's patterns within the show itself that
Sure.
are unique to the show.
and that's not a bad thing.
That's not a
that
bad
in
thing.
fact can be the way that the show is showing off its chops,
Right.
and being like,
and
this is
setting
what the
good
show's about.
expectations so that people are then able to be emotionally invested for those
Exactly.
moments. You know?
Right.
So
Because-
this is one of those moments.
Right, because
where-
when someone pulls out a knife in a drama, you want that to feel
Terrifying.
impactful and terrifying, not just the why the fuck did this turn into a murder mystery show?
Right.
You know, like yeah,
or why did this turn into a slasher? Or
right,
something?
exactly.
Yeah,
You know, yeah.
So, all right, here we go. I'm really excited for this. Kyo, I can't wait to rewatch Kyo's earlier stuff, all with this in context,
And
get that extra bit of just like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, that's so good.
Last thing I want to mention from this episode that it just sort of made me think of with regards to the early stuff is that Kyo actually saw the hat very early on in the show.
Oh, very early
Yes,
on,
he
yeah.
saw it again in like the previous episode or whatever, and that made him like remember everything.
Yeah.
But he saw it way back at the beginning, which is fun because then that means that it is that impactful that it needed to be brought up at the beginning, but it also would inform basically the rest of his interactions.
I think
with
it was the
Tohru
very
and all of that
same
stuff.
episode he was introduced. He saw it at the very end of the episode.
I think that might have been the case.
Because I think
yeah.
he was, or it might have been this.
It was
It's that
really
at the
soon
end
after.
of one episode, we have him introduced, but he's more just teased.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next episode, he's fully introduced. And at the end of that episode, I believe he sees the hat
Right.
in the bag. I think
Yeah, or like on the book
On
stand
the
or
book
something.
stand or something like that. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly.
Yep.
But okay.
Oh,
Y'all,
man.
Thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get on early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yes, if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb,
I'm Jacob.
and we'll see you all
Next time.